Hello, what is going on? In last week's video, I walked you through step-by-step how to create a successful lead generation campaign in 2026 with Meta ads. This week, I'm going to be focusing on the same thing, but how to create a successful sales campaign. It's actually going to be pretty similar to what we did last week. However, there are some few small important differences that I'm obviously going to point out as we start building this campaign together. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so as always, in order to get started, you need to click on that green create button when you're on the home page of your ad account, and then we're going to choose the sales objective for this one, and you just go ahead and click continue. As I emphasized many times in the last video, same thing here at the campaign level, ad set level, and ad level. Make sure that your naming conventions are very detailed. I'm going to not do that right here simply because my primary goal is just to show you the ins and outs of the exact settings that you want to be selecting and creating for your sales campaigns. But again, just please be diligent and provide very detailed names for all of your campaigns. All right, so also just like in last week's training, there was the option to go with campaign budget and ad set budget. And again, with sales, I recommend campaign level budget. 95% of the time, the only time you really need to do ad set budget is if you are doing a very specific test and a certain ad or audience needs to get a very specific budget in order for you to feel confident in the results. But outside of those scenarios, the campaign level budget is absolutely the way to go. And then that is all that we need here for at the campaign level. So then we move on to the ad set level. Again, please do choose or select and create a very detailed ad set name. For the conversion location, be very careful in terms of what it auto selects right here. You can see that for me in this instance, it has auto selected message destinations. That's not what I want. I want it to go to a website in this case. And then for the performance goal, we're going to stick with maximize number of conversions. Maximize value of conversions certainly is an option for you to look at or consider. That's really more reserved though for e-commerce based businesses or any type of marketing funnel where people can buy multiple things. If you're just really selling one product and that's it, then there's no point in you choosing the maximize value of conversions. However, again, if you're e-commerce and people can buy multiple products, or maybe you have a funnel flow that has a whole series of upsells and downsells, then you can definitely test maximize value of conversions. Now, all that being said, your first default option is maximize number of conversions. So for your first campaign, do that. Once you have some campaign data rolling in and it's good data, you're happy with the results, then go ahead and test a separate campaign of maximize value of conversions. I wouldn't recommend starting with that, so just keep that in mind. So in this case, we're going to stick with maximize number of conversions, and then we are going to go with the purchase event. Now, depending on the platform that you are using, if you are using Shopify and you've already used the native Meta pixel integration, then you don't need to worry about anything here. You just select the purchase event and it's going to fire automatically because Shopify has a really great integration with the pixel and it auto creates all these events for you. Purchase, initiate checkout, add to cart, all that kind of stuff. However, other platforms do not do this. So for example, if you are on ClickFunnels, then you are going to have to add these events yourself. There are so many videos out there and on YouTube that teach you how to do this. I'm not going to spend the time doing that right here simply because every single platform is going to be different. So all I'm going to encourage you to do is to make sure that before you select the purchase objective and you're like, okay, cool, I'm all good right here, make sure you do a little bit of searching on YouTube, like how to install the Metapixel on my platform, and then you'll find some tutorials. Make sure you always select one of the most recent ones in case there's any kind of interface updates that you want to be looking at. All right, cost per result goal. We can't do anything with this right here. Value rules, you can add that. I've done a video on value rules that you can go ahead and check out right here in the corner. But then for the attribution model, we're going to stick with standard. Here you can choose between standard and incremental. Again, if you are an e-commerce business, it might be worth testing incremental. So what that is going to actually do is that it's going to optimize for more of the long-winded customer journeys, right? So your standard journey is you see an ad, you click on the ad, and you buy a product. Very easy standard flow, and that would be your standard attribution model right there. However, that's not how everything takes place, particularly with the younger generation, where they need a lot of exposure to messaging and ads before they ever make their first purchase. So they have to see 1 ad, 2 ads, 3 ads, and then go to your website, maybe sign up for your newsletter, maybe start following you on social media, all that kind of stuff. And then eventually they're going to buy. So for those longer, more roundabout journeys, that's what the incremental attribution model optimizes for. But again, it really only makes sense to do that for an e-commerce based business, simply because they can choose multiple products. They can start small, work their way up. Whereas if you're a single product business, they're either going to make the decision on their own. They don't really need a whole lot of messaging about the same exact product that they can get over and over again. They're going to know relatively soon whether or not they want that product. So again, if you're e-commerce, start with standard. Don't get me wrong. I think that is the best way to commence your marketing campaign. But if you're, again, like we were talking about, maximize number of conversions versus maximize value of conversions, then, if you see positive results, okay, cool. Go ahead and create a second campaign that is optimizing for incremental conversions and just see what the results are. But again, here in this case, we are going to stick with standard, and then we're not going to make any changes to the attribution settings. We're going to stick with the same of 7-day click, 1-day engage view, and 1-day view. Conversion count. Here you have a choice here. You can count all conversions, count every conversion that happens after someone interacts with your ad, or only count the first conversion after someone interacts with your ad. So again, if you're an e-commerce based business and someone buys your product on the first of the month and then they buy another product 30 days later, then it'll count under the all conversions. If you don't want to know that though, and you only wanted to account for the very first conversion, the one that they bought on the first of the month, then choose first conversion. Really, it just comes down to how you want to be measuring the success of your ad campaigns. For most people, I would keep it at all conversions. However, if you are a very large multinational company with a big team, big advertising budget, people are seeing messages on social media and TV and podcasts from you, then the first conversion probably actually makes the most sense, because who knows later on if they make another purchase, if that's really attributed to you or some sort of other ad they saw on Google or YouTube or whatever it might be. So to keep things cleaner, keep it at first conversion if you're in that situation. But for the vast majority of businesses who are on smaller budgets, simpler campaigns, you're not on 20 different platforms, you don't have a big team, sticking with all conversions is absolutely fine. Start date, I am recording this on a Wednesday. As I mentioned in the last video, I do like to have things go live in the morning, so I will schedule this to go live at 12:30 a.m. Pacific time right there. If I need to choose an end date, I'll do that, but I'll just leave that blank right here. Now here is where probably the biggest difference between the lead campaign and the sales campaign is going to take place. A lot of these other things, like thinking about maximize number of conversions versus value of conversions, and then all conversions versus first conversion, honestly those are all differences, but at the end of the day those are small differences that really only impact on the margins. In terms of a big difference, it's this part right here. Once we scroll down to the audience section, in the last training for lead generation, I said just leave it blank, blah blah blah, etc., etc. We're still going to leave it blank right here. However, to start, I do recommend initially clicking on further limit the reach of your ads and confirming it right here with Meta. They give you this big warning. It makes it look very scary and stuff like that. But I do like to start with this to avoid the expansion that takes place with the standard Advantage Plus setting that is enabled. And the reason for that is because here we're optimizing for sales, meaning we really need to make sure we get on the right foot and we are able to get in front of a higher caliber audience. With the Advantage Plus, again, I'm not saying Advantage Plus is bad. However, it is a much broader audience, and it can, in my testing at least, take longer for a sales campaign to find those qualified people when you have the standard settings enabled. As a result, I like to switch back to quote unquote further limit the reach of my ads, actually just do basic broad targeting and start there, and then I can work my way up and expand from there. So that right there is the major difference for lead generation, right? I mentioned, if you were able to tune into that training, that you should only click that button if you're targeting a warm audience. That's still the case here for sales as well. If you're targeting warm, 100% do that. But what I'm saying here for cold is that start with this, and then again, once you find some success, then go ahead and create another ad set that does not have that enabled, and you can switch back to what they call their recommended setup. So that right there is the main difference. Again, of course, you can make any geographic changes, any any age range changes, any gender changes based upon your business, whether you exclusively sell to men or women or stuff like that. So you can go ahead and modify like that. But in terms of detailed targeting, I'm not going to be putting anything in there. I will, however, be putting in exclusions. So in order to get to that, we have to scroll down to custom audiences, and then right here when you click on that, you can see add exclusion, and I want to exclude 2 people right here. I'm going to exclude all website visitors for the last 30 days, because if they've clicked on my ad and been to my website, then we'll create a separate retargeting campaign. I'll do a separate training video for that. I don't want to lump too many things here all at once in this video, but I'll have a separate retargeting campaign going after those people. So I don't want my retargeting campaign and this prospecting campaign to be competing with one another, right? So that's why I want to exclude everyone who has clicked my ad and been over to my website. And then of course I do also want to exclude all of my purchasers. Looks like I actually have not created a purchase audience right here, so let's go ahead and do that just in case you don't know how to do that. You go to the left-hand navigation, you click on audiences, and you click on the blue button, create audience, custom audience, website, next, and then we are going to choose people who I've activated the purchase event. It's actually not allowing me, and I know what's going on here. It's not allowing me to select a purchase event because I actually don't have the purchase event on my website enabled, because there's actually no purchases you can do on my website. I just have forms, contact forms that you can fill out. So it's not letting me select that, but normally you would be able to see purchase right here. You select that, and then I would do that. In terms of the date range, the audience retention, how long you exclude it for, again, it depends on the kind of business and product that you're selling. If you are a skincare company and people run through their skincare products within 30 days, well, then only do a 30-day exclusion of people who have bought, right? So all purchases in the last 30 days, that'll be your exclusion. However, if you are selling some kind of one-on-one consultation that people only need once a year, then do the max audience retention of 180 days, because if they buy from you today, they don't need to be seeing your ads a month from now, 2 months from now, whatever it might be. So it really depends on how, your business and what makes the most sense for you. So just give that some thought. But then we're going to head back to our campaign. Obviously, like I said, I can't add the exclusion of purchasers here because I don't have the purchase event on my website, but let's pretend that I've added that right here. So we are excluding purchasers, and again, it depends on the date range for your business, and then all website visitors for the last 30 days. The retargeting campaign, which I'll do in a separate video, will cover that right there. So then that's it here at the ad level. So now we want to go down, ad set level. So now we want to go down to the ad level. I'm going to make sure my business is selected right here for the Facebook page. And then this is going to be very similar to what we saw with lead generation, but I am going to call a couple of things out. You could do an Advantage Plus catalog ad. That's assuming that you have a catalog created in your Meta account. If you do not, then this is not an option available to you. I'm not going to go in the ins and outs of that right now. I'll create a separate video at some point in the future on how to run a catalog ad. But again, if you're an e-commerce based business and you have a catalog attached to your page, sure, that can certainly be an option for you. Now here, for a single image, carousel, whatever it might be, these are the same options as lead generation, but I will say oftentimes for purchase campaigns, I have found carousel ads to be very effective, so just remember those. I want to turn off multi-advertiser ads. I do not want my ad to appear next to other advertisers. It can create a very confusing experience. In this case right here, just as an example, I'm going to just put my main domain. I wouldn't actually send people here for an actual campaign, but this is just a sample video. So there we go. I'm putting in my URL to my main website. Personalized destinations. Send people to the experience most likely to result in a conversion after they click on your ad. So here you're kind of giving Meta a free-for-all in terms of where they can click. Again, it really just depends on the type of business that you are. If you are an e-commerce based business, then this can make sense. I'm not even saying that you should do it, but it could be worth testing. However, if you're selling a single product, 2 products, 3 products, not a whole lot, I would not do this, right? Because then it's going to send them to your About Us page, and there's no purchase taking place on the About Us page, and that could be bad, right? So don't do that if you're only selling 1 or just even a handful of products. But if you're selling a bunch, much, then you could consider doing that. You can always edit this right here. I'm going to turn this off for now. That's how I like to start. I always like to start with more control on my end, and then as I start to see beneficial results, then sure, I'll give Meta the freedom and flexibility that's always demanding from us as advertisers. Setup creative, nothing really different right here. If you are doing a short-term promotion for your sale, you can turn on this extension right here. Same thing with branding. If you feel that is important to you, sure. If not, you can leave that off. Site links. So again, this really does depend on the type of business you are. I think that if you're an e-commerce based business, this can make a lot of sense. Again, I'm not saying it's mandatory. I'm not saying that it's going to really swing the results of your campaigns one way or another, but I do think it makes sense to at least test it at some point. If you're a single product business, then no, I don't think this really makes sense, because sending people to your About Me page or something like that, it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Obviously, I'm not an e-commerce business, so I'm going to go turn this off, but again, if you are an e-commerce business, you can consider giving that a test later down the road. For the beginning, just turn that off and you will be fine. So then we select the image. I'm just going to go with this one right here of me holding a computer. Again, this is not an actual real campaign I'm going to publish here. It's just kind of give you the thought process of the bones of a campaign that you want to be building for your sales campaign. Here is my text, and then here is my headline. I'm just putting in sample text right there. Obviously, since this is a purchase campaign, there's a couple of different options you can do. Sorry, I missed it right here. Order right now. Sign up can still make sense depending on the type of purchase. If it's some sort of online consultation, then you can still use the sign up call to action. That does make sense. Even though you could probably also use sign up for lead generation as well. You can switch between those two. But yeah, just make sure, take a look at these, do what makes the most sense. If they're booking like a paid call, you can even use the book now option. Ultimately, what I'm just getting at here is that I would say for the sales objective, there's more options you can utilize in comparison to the lead generation. With lead generation, really, you're only going to use sign up or learn more. I wouldn't really do anything outside of that. But for a sales campaign, you can choose a couple of different ones. You could also use get offer if you're doing a specific promo like Black Friday or something like that. So yeah, just take a look at these. Make sure you are choosing the one that makes the most sense. I'll just do get offer as a random example for my call to action button right here. I click next. Here are the AI generated images that it's going to do for me. So again, just like last week, take a look at these. Some of these can be good. Some of these can be really terrible and lousy. So you can just choose the ones you do, unselect the ones that you don't like. So let's just pretend that I like these ones right here. Cool. I'll go ahead and click next. So now I have 4 ad variations as opposed to just the one image. And then for the Advantage Plus creative quote unquote enhancements, even though I don't like calling them enhancements because I think they ruin campaigns oftentimes, you want to leave enhance media text off, translate text off, add overlays off, show spotlights off, add product tags. You can add that if you have that set up, but again, you have to have your catalog created for that. So if you don't have a catalog, then you can just completely ignore that. And then reveal details over time, I like to have that one off. All these ones, text improvements, I absolutely do recommend turning that one off. Visual touch-ups, add music, sure, they're pretty harmless. Don't think they're going to really swing your campaign one way or the other. If you want to leave them on, that's perfectly fine. And then this one right here, adapt in multi-image format. I don't like this. It can make your ads look really strange, and you just won't be having the intended experience that you put out there in the world. Add animation. This is going to take your image and it'll spin it maybe. Again, it's one of those things I don't really love, so I tend to have this one off. But at the end of the day, if you want to have it on for funsies, sure, that's fine. But typically, no, I like to have that off. And then lastly, flex media. Show media you chose for a specific aspect ratio across all placements. Then yes, I do like to do this one. It's going to optimize the way your image looks depending on whether it's square or 4x5 or whatever it is. So that one's fine. So again, I like to turn off the vast majority of these quote-unquote Advantage Plus creative enhancements because they usually do not enhance your campaign in any way, shape, or form. So yeah, this is my recommended setup right here. Then I click done. And at that point, we are pretty much ready to go, right? So a lot of similarities to a lead generation campaign, but also some key differences that I did want you to be aware of, which merited creating its own separate video. All right, and there we have it. And before we wrap up real quick, if you're looking at this and you're like, okay, great, this is interesting, but at the end of the day, this is just not my wheelhouse. Can I outsource this? The answer is yes, you absolutely can. My team and I can help you, whether you are a small business on a small budget or a large business on a large budget. We have some sort of package that makes the most sense for where you are at for your business journey. So I have a link in the description. Go ahead and check that out. You'll book a call directly with me. We'll hop on a Zoom. We'll see where you're at, what makes the most sense, and how to best move forward from there. Again, I have that in the description below, so go ahead and check it out. Okay, so I hope you found this overview helpful on how to set up an optimized sales campaign in Meta for 2026. So again, a lot of similarities, but also some key differences in comparison to the lead generation campaign. But if you do this right here, this structure that I went through, you're going to set yourself on the right foot. And then later on, once you do get those initial results, go ahead and test all those things that I called out throughout the video, whether that's the incremental conversions, value of conversions, the optimized website destination, whatever it might be. You can start to have fun with these things if you start to get some good initial results. And that is like the fun thing about a sales campaign, is that there are more optimizations that you can test in a sales campaign in comparison to a lead generation campaign. So for those of you who do like to make tweaks and see how you can increase revenue, even if it's just by a small percentage, you can have a lot of fun with sales campaigns. Personally, I really love sales campaigns, and so I hope you do too. And I hope this video and this training has given you the tools and tips and strategies to help you find success this coming year. So that is all for today. As always, if you have any questions about this, just drop any comments in the show notes wherever you are consuming this, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you next time.